Welcome to this month's episode of the Outpost. I am Adam Alexander.
And I'm Mike Hurt.
And I'm Al Labelle.
We got it. Well, yeah, we've got a special guest today. And Adam, can you tell us a little bit about our guy here? This is Al Labelle, folks.
Al Labelle is our benefits protection team leader, I believe is the title.
That's correct,
As well as
Adam.
the legislative director.
Yep.
Well, legislative liaisons, basically.
Okay.
It's a long way of saying it.
Yeah. And, the one thing just to, kind of share, and this, I got to tell you, folks, it's a real honor to have this guy on our show. In the layman's terms, we'd probably label Al a legislative director for the state of Wisconsin with the DAV. And I've been around a little bit, and literally this guy is the best. And he's our voice, he's our advocate. And he works down in Madison, works with political leaders on local level. This guy's in Capitol Hill. He can walk over Capitol Hill and he knows exactly where he's going. And so it's a real blessing to have him on. But what we do with this show is we talk about DAV stuff, but we also like to highlight service because everybody has a story. So I don't know, you want to get us kicked off from there, my friend?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your background in the Navy, Al.
Well, okay.
He's a Navy guy.
Navy, all right. If you want to put the picture up, I'll go from there.
Could you zip that up?
That was many years ago, without the wrinkles and whatever. I think that was some kind of idea I had with that photo. But basically, I went to UMass Clark in 1965 at the Gulf of Tonkin. So I was 2S, Gulf of Tonkin.
Now,
they did
were you drafted or did you jump in?
Well, that's what I was getting at. I was going to get drafted. So I went to, got my draft notice, passed the physical, immediately knew I was going to get drafted. So I went to my friendly Naval Reserve station, took some tests, and they wanted to sign me up right then and there. However, it was December 2nd that I enlisted and went to Logan Airport, flew out to Chicago to go to Great Lakes for basic. This was
in the wintertime.
It was February to, it was December to February, so it was cold. It was very cold. From there, it was funny, I did the GCTs, and without being too egotistical, I scored very well on them, except for one area, mechanical. So the Navy, in its wisdom, decided to send me to boat school so I could learn how to drive what is called a LCVP, or Higgins boat, going back to World War II.
Yeah.
So I was called at Great Lakes. This was at Little Creek. So we used to get up at the crack of dawn, get in the boats, drive out to the middle of Chesapeake Bay and do rotations, waiting to charge the beach and lower the gate and all of that. So as cold as I was at Great Lakes, this was worse. So after the boat school, I was assigned to the USS Okinawa, which, if you want to put that one up.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Now,
Hey,
what type of ship is that? A destroyer, or what do you have there?
No, this is a basically USS Okinawa LPH-3 landing platform helicopter. If you can see, there are white circles on there. There's 7 of them, and that's the areas that a helicopter would land or take off from. So and that was that's basically what we did. The person you can't see with the white shirt is what is known as a purple shirt, and I did that the first year because there's 7 spots on the flight deck, so you need to have a precise path to and from the squadron, because the UEs or helicopters have tail rotors, and you want to follow the path precisely. Otherwise, you run the risk of walking into a tail rotor.
That would ruin your weekend.
Yeah. So basically, being in a squadron, they would call down, they'd have a headset on, and they would say, Labelle, take squad, whatever it was, up to spot 4. So we'd go up the catwalk onto the flight deck, and then it was the buddy system, one hand on one shoulder, and you'd put them on the helicopters. So the first year was, I called it a caravan cruise. We were in what is called Land Fleet or Atlantic Fleet. The whole canal was home ported out of Norfolk. So basically we did the Caribbean Islands and Gitmo, but it was summertime, and you know, we ran practice operations at what we called Rosie Roads. It's now Vieques, Puerto Rico. So we spent a lot of time in San Juan, St. Thomas Islands. Basically, it was a free Caribbean cruise. The weather was great, and all of that.
Now, you would be considered, just to if kind of help for our viewers a little bit, you would be considered a Vietnam veteran Blue Water Navy?
Well, that's later. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So in December, we got transferred. I was home for Christmas leave, and one of my duties was I did transfers. So I got a call saying your leave has been canceled. You need to get back right away. We were transferred from Land Fleet to Pac Fleet or Pacific Fleet, home ported in San Diego. So we left Norfolk in January, went through the Panama Canal, up to San Diego in February, and it was one of those arrivals. You see them with the tugboats, with the water pouring out. All the mayors were there to greet us,
wow.
You know, they made USS Okinawa Day in San Diego and the surrounding communities. So we were there till March. They did some upgrades, and from there we headed towards Vietnam via Hawaii, Okinawa, the island where the Marines were training, and then from there went to Subic Bay, the Philippines, to finish the training and to get upgraded even more so. There were 600 complement of 600 Navy personnel running the ship, and we were the chauffeurs for about 2,300 Marines. In April, we were considered what the Navy calls on station off the coast of Vietnam. Basically, we went from what is Chu Lai, south of Da Nang, all the way up to the DMZ. Most of the time, we were near the DMZ into what is called I Corps. So from April, in the next 7 months, we did 9 amphibious landing operations, of which not all was successful, would be the best way to phrase it. The ship, once an amphibious operation got underway, we became what is called a combat hospital ship. So the wounded would be on the starboard side of the ship. The KIAs would go on the port side of the ship. We had a morgue also on there. So anyways, after the first operation, not all went well. So if you want to put the picture up, please. That was a ceremony and the helmets represented the KIAs on the flight deck. If you look over on the right, the person is playing taps at this time, and we're all saluting. I do remember being on the flight deck for that ceremony. However, like all wars, they did it after the first operation that we did, and after that it was, to my memory, we never did it anymore after that. But that was a way of saluting the, honoring the fallen, I believe is what the ceremony was called. So that was basically in November we were off station, the Navy called it. We were relieved, and then eventually went to Subic Bay, supplied up, and then headed towards San Diego with stops in Hong Kong, Japan. Actually, it was Yokosuka, but we took a train over to Tokyo. From there, once again, we went to Hawaii, This is a real personal aside. Old guy reference here. Don Ho, I remember seeing the Tiny Bubbles was playing in the hotel when we came back. I always remember that. And then from there, we landed in San Diego on December 15th, I believe it is, and that's when I got discharged off of active duty, and then flew back to Boston and did the Naval Reserves till 1972. So that's basically my naval career.
So what was your final rank when you wrapped up then?
Well, when I wrapped up, I was a PN3, they called it, on active duty, but I made it up to PN1 when I retired, or got discharged from that, which an honorable discharge, despite my best efforts.
So I just had a question with that ship picture back there. When you went into the hospital mode, so then would you have to meet the helicopters and then assist with the crews? Oh, geez.
Yeah, and on top of that, the office I worked in, the morgue was underneath. And I got to say, there are certain things that will trigger trauma. So the smell of death is something you don't ever
I can imagine.
forget.
Yeah. Wow.
After you were discharged, where'd you go from there, Al?
From there, I actually, well, I was born in Worcester, Mass., resided in Southbridge, Mass., raised there, and then for the next 45 years, except for time at UMass and the Navy, I lived in Southbridge, Mass. So when I got out, I became, I worked for a cloth wholesaler named Colitex Corporation, and I was assistant manager of warehouse operations.
We'd never guessed you were from Massachusetts.
Yeah, no, if I talk long enough, I get really tired, and it's car. But anyways, from there, I owned and operated a bowling alley from 1974 to 1988.
Interesting.
And as part of that, I was heavily involved with the State Trade Association, which was called the Massachusetts Bowling Association. And from 1984 to 1986, I was president. I also served on what was called Bowling Proprietors of America Association, which was the National Trade Association, and served on their board of directors. I sold a bowling alley in 1988, so drove around the country that year, 1989, for reasons that is not clear to me anymore. I hiked the Appalachian Trail, starting at Springer Mountain, Georgia.
Really? I never knew that.
All the way up to Mount Katahdin. I left on May 10th from Springer Mountain and got to Mount Katahdin on October 15th. In retrospect, I never thought of it at the time. I just had nothing to do. I figured, let's try it. It sounds good. And
Like Forrest Gump, I started running and just kept running.
But, you know, maybe I had issues to work out. I don't know. But it's one of the proudest things that I've done.
That's awesome.
Wow, that is great. Well, I got to ask, we are the DAV, the Outpost show. When did you join the DAV and why?
Well, before, all right, why? Well, in 1990, I was diagnosed what is called chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or CLL. So around 2004, I went on the internet, and lo and behold, it was Mike Sancelli, one of my shipmates. So it turned out he was living in Minneapolis. I was, at that time, had moved to Wisconsin and was living in Marshfield. So it's not that far away. So we got together, and it was more than just a coincidence. It turned out Mike had CLL. So we compared notes, and he said you need to file a claim with VA. So I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest about it. So I filed a claim, and DAV was very instrumental in walking me through it. Now, I was very fortunate compared to other veterans, because I worked in personnel. In fact, Mike, because of your request, I went through all these records yesterday in my basement. I had brought home a copy of all my service records. And I did it as a memento. It wasn't I had this idea, I'll be filing a claim, I'll need this stuff. I just wanted it as a souvenir, a memento. So I had all my materials. So the claim went through fairly rapidly, in great part thanks to DAV's help. So when it got done, and I had no idea, you mean I'm getting compensation? This is how little I knew. I was just filing to go on record that I had been exposed to Agent Orange. And so they said something about, would you consider being a member? And that's when I became a member. So and it was I owe it all to Mike Sancelli. If I had never met him, I never would have made the connections.
No kidding.
Since joining, what positions have you held in the DAV?
Oh, well, chapter, I'm adjutant and treasurer, and I'm still a treasurer.
And you're out of Marshfield?
Yeah, chapter 57 in Marshfield. Elmer Rapp chapter, to be official. And although our area covers all of Clark County, a portion of Marathon County, and half of Wood County. So we have a very large chapter area geographically. And roughly, I think it's 165 members, which is pretty good, and we usually get about 12 members at a meeting, which percentage-wise is pretty high. So on a department level, I started out in 2009 as the department judge advocate, meaning, hey, you guys better be following the constitutional bylaws, you know, and make sure that all the chapters and members follow the national chapter, department rather, chapter and national, well, back it up, the constitution and bylaws of all three organizations, of which we are a subunit of national. So on the national level, in 2009, I was appointed to what is called the Interim Legislation Committee, of which I got reappointed. And
okay, just now, if you could go into detail, and I just, you know, for our viewers to be able to really get a sense of what Al does, but you're in D.C. and you are literally in a
rubbing elbows with the politicians.
Yeah, and kind of you're kind of the tip of the spear for what we do.
Yeah, let me wrap it up by saying in 2015 I was appointed chair of the committee, and a position I continue to hold today.
Right.
So yes, I know, Mike, you've been interested in some of the legislators I've dealt with. So if you want to put up the first one, and I'll talk somewhat about it.
And we are, we are nonpartisan. If you could share with folks what that means.
Yeah, we do not get involved. The way most people get their news on what's happening in Congress is from a political lens. However, there's a difference. Once they win an election, they are elected to legislate, to meet the needs of their constituents. And there's a difference. So from a legislative point of view is what I deal with. I don't deal with politicians, I deal with legislators. Mm-hmm. So, we are down the middle of the road. We do not favor one side or the other. We treat both sides of the aisle equally because they're there to legislate and meet the needs of disabled veterans. So if you want, the picture's back up. So that is a gentleman, as you can tell, I had a few less wrinkles in that one. That's a few years ago, roughly about 2008, 2009. The gentleman on the left is Representative Dave Obey, who I was a constituent I still am in Congressional District 7. So as you can see, there's a lot of books in the background. So Dave was doing a book signing in Marshfield. So you never miss an opportunity. Yep. You don't want to hound them, but I went to the book signing, and at that time our #1 issue was advanced appropriations. So to explain what that means is, when the government shut down, the VA would shut down.
Yeah.
So advanced appropriations was a concept that we stole from PBS. Their funding was done using advanced appropriation, meaning it was done a year ahead of time. So if it's a fiscal year 2020, their appropriations were done for fiscal year 2021, meaning if the government shut down, they would still operate. So that basically our term at that time was when we would meet with legislators, we would say, if it's good enough for Big Bird, it's good enough for veterans. So, and so Dave was, at that particular moment, the president was in favor of advanced appropriation, the Speaker of the House was, and the chair of the House, they call it Milcom Vet Committee, was. The only one that was reluctant was Dave. So again, I took the opportunity to, for the book signing, to go and see Dave and say, hey, Dave, you know, we've been discussing advanced appropriations here. Any change of mind? You know, and so you never let an opportunity pass. Fortunately, shortly after that picture was taken, I got a phone call from his office saying, Dave's going to be on Route 51, which is on Wisconsin Public Radio. Why don't you call in? So I took that as a hint, and I did. I called in, and I had never done this before or since, and I didn't know. It said 6 o'clock, so I called in at 6, and there's 5 minutes of news. So I got to hold the phone for 5 minutes, and eventually I became the first caller for that reason. So as usual, you want to catch them doing something good, so I praised Dave for his efforts on veterans, and the moderator said, well, do you have a question? I said, yes, I do. Dave, I understand we're formulating the upcoming budget. What can veterans expect? And his answer was, and I dropped the phone when he gave it, was, we're going to try something new. We're going to try advanced appropriation, which was really a stunner to me. I ended up calling national headquarters and saying, guess what? And shortly after that, it went right through.
Wow.
So that was one of probably the proudest things I ever dealt with. I got to tell you, I spent months on that one issue. And thanks to Dave Olby, it did finally pass.
Wow, that is great. Well, one thing, as shared, you've said that you work with elected officials, with legislators. Now, you have another picture on the other side of the aisle.
Yes, I do. You want to show it?
No,
that's
next.
Oh,
yeah,
that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
That is. This is really bragging here. That's the speaker's balcony that overlooks the mall. And at that time, we were doing what was called, our initiative was called Unsung American Heroes. And what we wanted to do was expand caregiver services that the VA provides to more than just post 9/11 veterans. When the VA caregiver services were set up, it was supposed to be done incrementally. So when the legislation passed, it was only for post 9/11 veterans, with the idea that they would kind of step ladder or phase in the other generations. Well, 9 years went by, and finally DAV made it a priority. So the people in that picture are, on the left is Yvonne Riley. Next to her is her husband, I believe he may have been national commander at that time, Dave Riley, who was a quadriplegic, and then Speaker Paul Ryan. Next to him, you guys might understand this, I may tear up, is Gary Augustine. And then I'm on the right. So basically, DAV had been trying to set a meeting up with Speaker Ryan for months to try and get a meeting to talk about, hey, will you please support this and make sure this legislation gets through the House and gets a vote. And they didn't hear back. So I got a phone call one day, and they're saying, look, we've been trying to get this meeting with Speaker Ryan. Can you do anything? And you'll appreciate this. We had a meeting earlier. I called Katie on the phone.
Yeah.
And I got a voicemail within 45 minutes. She's a staff member that worked for Speaker Ryan. 45 minutes, I got an she called back. She said, what do you need? I said, well, we'd like to get a meeting with Speaker Ryan. Within an hour and a half, we had a date and a time. And that was the picture. So Dave and Yvonne were terrific explaining a face to the issue. Anyways, we had that meeting, and that's the momentum of our meeting with Speaker Ryan.
Now, and then, you know, we're looking at a little bit of the federal level, but again, you also work the state side of things. So if we could have the next picture.
Oh, yeah, that was with Governor
go.
Scott Walker. That was at a state convention. He actually, 4 minutes left.
4 minutes.
Well, we got, he signed a bill. They had to do with veteran employment. So being the aggressive marketer that I am, I had those shirts made up, and I just figured DAV equals benefits, rights, advocacy. So I had him hold the shirt up, and he was nice enough to do it. But that's the story behind that one. And then the last one, if you want to show it, please. That was State of the State with Governor Tony Evers, our current governor. He's been nice enough to invite DAV to the 2 in-person State of the States that he's had. We just had one this time, but that picture has the mask on it, so this one is from the first one. So again, you never let an opportunity go by. So afterwards, they have a meet and greet, usually in the governor's conference office. So when you take the picture, you just spend a moment and say, hey, you know, the state budget's coming up. I would like to emphasize that these bills need to go into the next state budget. So that's kind of the 4 pictures. My understanding is our time is wrapping up here.
Got about 2 minutes left.
So anyways, you know, I told Mike, I said we need to do an hour. But we do have some critical policy goals, and I'll just hit on them quickly. Toxic exposure, hopefully I get them all. Survivor benefits, long-term care, women and underserved and minority veterans, mental health slant, suicide prevention, and timely, high-quality care, health care for veterans. And the next show you have me on, we'll go into greater details on that.
I got to ask you, for the sake of our viewers, what about those legislative awards? Do you know who got those?
Come on, Mike. Thanks, that $20 bill went to good use. Yes, the department has been fortunate enough the last 3 years to win what is called Outstanding Performance in Advocacy, or OPA Awards. So thanks to the great team, our team DAV Wisconsin, and their advocacy efforts, we have managed to win that award for the last 3 years on a department level. So thank you guys. I know you've been great advocates. I've seen you in meetings. Adam is terrific to bring along. And congratulations, by the way. I understand.
Yeah. What is the announcement you have to make, Adam?
We've got a baby on the way in a couple weeks. Hopefully she lasts, unless she decides to come early. I'm going to be a dad pretty soon.
Yeah, so that's exciting stuff. So he is about to be a dad. And with that, we wrap up another edition of The Outpost. Have a great day.
And thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah.